I turned 19 on a Thursday. There was no cake, no decorations, just a mop bucket and a smug smile from my mother. "Happy birthday," she said, handing me a pair of rubber gloves. "Today you're going to learn what real life feels like." I blinked. I thought it was a joke. We weren't rich, but we weren't poor either. I'd never expected anything lavish, a quiet dinner maybe, a movie night. Something. But instead, I was shoved into the back seat of my parents' old van and driven across town to a rundown bungalow I didn't recognize. We pulled up to a cracked driveway, weeds growing through concrete, a dented mailbox with a name I'd never seen. Please subscribe to our channel and tell us in comments from where are you watching this video? "What is this?" I asked. Dad didn't even look at me. "This is humility," he said. The woman who answered the door was in her 70s, hunched over, smelled like cat litter and mildew. She barely looked surprised when my parents announced, "This is our daughter. She'll be cleaning your home top to bottom today. It's her birthday." "She needs discipline," Mom added. "We've coddled her too long." They handed her the gloves and bucket like it was a ceremonial offering. Then they drove away. I stood in that stranger's hallway, stunned, breathing in the scent of old carpets and faded sorrow. I cleaned for 8 hours, dusted ancient knickknacks, scrubbed a yellowing bathtub, hauled heavy trash bags from the basement. The old woman didn't speak much, just watched TV reruns while I worked, muttering something about how kids today are finally learning. By the time my parents returned, my arms were sore and my jeans were stained with bleach. My gift, they said, was character. I said nothing, but I felt something inside me snap. That night, while my friends texted birthday wishes and asked if I was out celebrating, I sat on the floor of my tiny room and made a silent promise. I would remember this. Every cruel smirk, every petty humiliation. I would rise so high they'd need binoculars just to see my shoes. And I would never, ever forget that house. The days after were worse. The woman told my parents I was too slow and not detail-oriented, so my mom grounded me. Not for arguing, but for embarrassing her. She said if I had cleaned well, maybe they would have considered buying me something small. A book. A dress. But I had, in her eyes, failed. That summer I got a job stocking produce at a local grocery store. I hid it from my parents, lying about school volunteering. I saved every dime. Ate crackers for lunch, picked up shifts no one wanted. One afternoon, while wiping down apples, I saw a real estate flyer pinned to the employee board. It showed the same old bungalow. "For sale. Investor opportunity." My breath caught. It had been months, but I remembered the warped stairs, the chipped paint, the broken doorknob in the hallway. I called the number listed. The owner, now in a care home, was selling fast. The price was low. Too low for most to care. But I did. I didn't have enough not yet, but I asked the realtor not to remove the sign. "Give me 60 days, I begged. I doubled my shifts, picked up night janitor work at the community center, tutored math in the evenings, barely slept. And when that wasn't enough, I sold my bike, my old guitar, anything that would bring in a few extra bucks. By day 58, I signed the papers. I bought the house. The same house my parents once forced me to scrub as punishment. I didn't tell them, not yet. I wanted it to stew. I wanted it to be perfect. Because this time I was going to give them a birthday surprise they'd never forget. I didn't step inside the house after I bought it. Not right away. Instead, I stood across the street, holding the keys in my hand, watching the empty front porch like it was some sleeping beast I had finally tamed. I wanted to transform it. But not yet. First, I wanted to make sure my parents saw it again, not as owners, but as servants. For months, I worked behind the scenes. I hired contractors to quietly renovate key areas of the house. I didn't fix everything just enough to make it look livable. I cleaned it up just enough to make it respectable. But I left some of the old damage visible, the peeling wallpaper in the hallway, the water-stained ceiling in the laundry room. It had to be familiar. Recognizable. I wanted their stomachs to twist when they walked in. Then I made my move. My parents had recently fallen into financial trouble. Dad lost a small business deal. Mom had racked up credit card debt from overspending at the country club. Their pride wouldn't let them ask for help, but their desperation did. One Sunday morning, I showed up to their doorstep in a blazer and slacks, holding a professional folder. I told them I worked for a private client who was looking for part-time domestic help. Light cleaning, basic upkeep, I said. The pay is generous, flexible hours, discreet arrangement. Mom narrowed her eyes. What's the catch? No catch, I smiled. But it requires trust and obedience. My client's very particular. Dad scoffed. Your generation wouldn't know the meaning of hard work if it slapped you. But fine, what's the address? I handed them a slip of paper. They didn't recognize it. Not yet. But I knew the moment would come. The next day, I left the door unlocked and watched from the security camera hidden in the living room. When they walked in, they froze. My mother's lips parted in a silent gasp. My father muttered something low under his breath. And then, as if on cue, he stepped forward and inspected the same floorboards I had once scrubbed on my knees. Is this? Mom asked, her voice shrinking. Dad nodded slowly. They had no idea the place now belonged to me. They assumed it was coincidence, a cruel twist of fate, and pride wouldn't let them leave. They started showing up every Tuesday and Thursday, scrubbing baseboards and sweeping the porch. I made sure they worked just hard enough to feel humiliated, but not hard enough to realize they were being punished. I left them passive-aggressive notes. Cobwebs behind the curtain again. Laundry not folded neatly. Dish rag still dripping, try again. Sometimes I left out snacks. Nothing fancy, just the kind of stale crackers and cheap tea they used to give me when I begged for comfort as a child. Weeks passed. I remained anonymous. And then, on my next birthday, exactly 1 year from the day they threw my gift in the trash, I left them an envelope on the kitchen counter. Inside was a card that read, Dear Mom, Dad, I hope this year's gift taught you something about humility. You've been cleaning your daughter's house for months. And the next job starts in the basement. Happy birthday to me. I attached a photo of me, holding the house keys, standing in the very hallway where they once left me with a stranger and a mop. The footage from the hidden camera was priceless. My mother sat down, completely pale. My father's mouth opened, then closed, then opened again, like a man realizing too late that he'd been outplayed by his own child. I didn't confront them. I didn't even go back. Instead, I donated their last paycheck, the one they hadn't collected yet, to a local youth shelter, one that offered housing and dignity to teens kicked out by abusive parents. Because unlike them, I remembered what it felt like to be discarded, and I refused to pass that pain forward. I didn't hear from them for 2 weeks after the envelope. Then I got a call. Blocked number. I didn't answer. Then another. This time it was my mother. Her voice cracked in the voicemail. Sweetheart, she said, stretching the word like it meant something. We didn't know. You should have told us. This was cruel. Cruel. That was rich, coming from the woman who once smirked while handing me a sponge on my birthday and told me I was lucky to be useful. That was the same year I bought her a necklace with my own savings. She never wore it, said it looked cheap. I let the message rot in my inbox. The next one came from my father. He didn't even try to be gentle. You think you're smart? He barked. You humiliated us after everything we did for you. Everything they did? I still had the receipts from the birthday gift they made me clean. I still had the echo of their laughter when I stepped out of the stranger's house that day, sweaty and ashamed, and asked if I could at least go home. No, my mother had said. We're meeting your sister for dinner. You can walk. So, no, I didn't owe them a reply. But I wasn't done. I had one final surprise. I listed the house for rent, but with one condition: the property would only be cleaned and maintained by the original caretakers. Their contract had already been extended under their own names. I made sure they were tied to it for another 6 months. The clause had been in the small print. If they refused to work, they'd be in breach of contract, and I could legally charge them penalties for the repairs I'd claim they left incomplete. I never intended to press charges. I just wanted them to squirm. It worked. One morning, I showed up early to the property, just to watch from the driveway. My father was scrubbing the mailbox. My mother was dragging out trash bags. They didn't notice me at first, but when they did, it was like watching guilt take human form. They froze. I stepped out of my car in silence, walked across the lawn, and set a box on the porch. Inside were copies of every note they'd ever written to me, every sarcastic lesson they disguised as parenting, every unpaid debt I'd covered for my sister just to avoid conflict, every ugly truth they tried to hide behind a smile. I didn't say a word. Just one look, one long, piercing look. Then I turned and left. Later that week, they broke the lease. I expected it, but I didn't care. I donated the entire security deposit to the same shelter I'd funded earlier. They used it to build a new reading room. It's called the Second Chance Room. A year later, the house became part of a mentorship program I helped launch, where teens like I once was could come, stay, and learn trades, skills, and dignity without shame. That house had once been my humiliation. Now it was my offering to those still crawling through the shame others dumped on them. As for my parents, last I heard, they moved in with my sister, the same one they always called the success story. The one who never lifted a finger, never paid a bill, and never visited the house once while they cleaned it. They thought they'd taught me humility, but all they taught me was how to survive their cruelty. And I turned it into power. The kind they never saw coming. The kind that doesn't scream or beg for love anymore. It just builds. And buys. And watches from the window while the past tries to mop the floor clean, never realizing the stain is on them. Please subscribe to our channel and tell us in comments from where